Morning everyone, it's Amanda Taylor at Oatka Glass Studio. So the upcoming video that I'm going to be doing a demo on the Pate Verre process, I apologize in advance. We filmed it and I forgot to turn the voice on, so I'm dubbed in the whole video. So like again, I apologize in advance for the the quality of the sound in it, and you missing out on our little banter while we're shooting the film. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you in a couple days after, and because we're going to be going over um, all the projects, or most of the projects that we worked on during this whole little series. So sorry in advance, and hope you enjoyed the video on the Pate Verre process. See you soon. Morning, it's Amanda Taylor from Oatka Glass Studio. This is a video that I'm doing for the Toe River Arts Council Studio Tour. It's on YouTube, my YouTube channel, so give me a thumbs up if you like what you see, or subscribe. I'll be doing more of these videos, so I hope you're enjoying it. But today we're going to be working on packing our molds that I made in the previous video, and it's called we're making a Pate Verre vessel, so that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be packing two molds, one that was dry and one that I made in the video a couple days ago. So, and I forgot to turn the mic on when I was recording this, so please bear with me as I fumble through this. Yeah, so we're switching over to the overhead camera. So I have a bucket of water, which I'm going to use to soak my dry mold, as it's been drying for probably a couple of years. So it's very dry. It needs to be wet for the Pate Verre process. So you can see the air bubbles rising as the water is soaking into the mold. And usually we let it sit for about 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, so the water can get absorbed into the mold. And the reason why we want the mold wet is because we actually can do use glass powders on the side of the molds, and by doing to create designs, and that allows the moisture from the mold to soak into the glass powder, so that your glass powder will stay on the side of the molds, just like my trees there. Yeah, and if you didn't have the mold wet, the powder would just fall off into the bottom of your mold. So you definitely want to work with your molds wet, or damp anyway. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to let it sit for 5 minutes and move on to talking about whatever. So I know this is terrible. I'm so sorry that I forgot to turn the volume on. But this is the mold that we created a couple days ago. We're going to be putting the fruit into the jars that we're going to be packing the molds with. I already have some that I had from a previous project, so I'm going to be using that in my mold today. Araya will be using her own color scheme that she's selected, so she's actually selecting her glass frit colors now. Yeah, so these containers are great for putting your mixture in. You add water to it, then you can shake it up, put the lid on, shake it up. And we use glass tack that's watered down quite a bit, and that's kind of like the glue that keeps the glass particles together. So, and I usually put it into these little tiny bottles that I'm pulling out now, just so that they're good for each person to be able to squeeze into their the little glass dishes with the lids on. and shake it up. So yes, that's Rhea's little mold, and she's I'm talking about her selecting her glass colors. She's having a hard time finding some of the colors, but I'm letting her do her own thing. So there's the mold that I made the other day. The little dish is inside of it still. That'll be removed before I pack the mold, obviously. When I use food coloring on the second coat or second layer that we pack her into the mold, and that is so that we can distinguish between the first layer that we packed in and the second layer. Then you can definitely see how much frit you're putting in on the second layer, because it's all the same. If it's all the same color glass, you can't really tell how much you've put in. So that's why I use the food coloring. Yeah. So on some of the tools. So these are some of the spoons that I use for putting the frit into the mold, and also for using for packing tools. So yeah, they're heavier spoons, so I love the shape of the spoon itself, so it really lends to packing the materials. And those are other the frit packing tools that I have. And that's old door knob that is attached to a dowel. And they're great as well for packing. They come in all different shapes and sizes, so depending on the mold shape that you're packing, those come in handy. That's a mortar pestle piece, so that works as well. This is for getting into tight, tiny little areas. So, like you start to collect all these different packing tools, and these are actually little wood dowels with the balls that you attach glued to the end of the dowel, and you get them at hobby stores. So, and Lance actually flattened off one of the surfaces of the ball so that you can pack a flat area, and that's for packing flat pieces, so that like I said, different shapes for different sizes for different kinds of molds. So those are knitting needles that I found, wooden knitting needles that the tops are great for packing. Yeah, and there's another round tool with on the end of a dowel. So those are our packing tools, and our spoons for filling the molds. So we're working on the plastic surfaces just so that we don't get frit all over the place, and also the moisture in the plaster and from the molds can get on the work surfaces on my table, so it's just easier to clean up when it's on that plastic surface. So yeah, and again, I don't have a clue what I'm talking about. So bad. Anyway, yeah, we'll continue on. Oh yeah, so I'm talking about packing glass powder into the bottom of our molds as feet, to be used as feet, and I use glass powder mixed with water. It's kind of like the freeze and fuse method. So I mix a little bit of water with the powder, then pack it into the bottom, and that gives you a really nice smooth bottom instead of a crystalline, like a sugary base, which is typical for a Pate de Verre. But I love my little powder feet, glass feet. And there's the powder I'm using. I'm going to be using Glacier Blue today for my foot. I think Araya is going to be using a Sunset Coral for her foot, for a little tiny dish that she's doing. Yeah, and then I'm going to be using the Glacier Blue. I was going to use Glacier Blue and the light cyan in my piece, but I ended up only using Glacier Blue, so. But that's fine for the Pate de Verre, and then I mix it with clear. And yeah, it's always like a 50-50 ratio, depending on how dark you want it to be. If you want your vessel to be darker, yeah, you just use a pure color. But I always like cutting it with clear, just so that there's a little bit of transparency to the piece. And this is kind of what this is like a reactive glass, so French vanilla and turquoise blue, and yeah, we'll see what happens. That's a reaction in the brown. Anyway, so yes, it's a shame that I didn't turn the volume on. So what am I talking about now? Oh, the paper towels. So we're gonna line the outside of our vessels with paper towel, and it's kind of rough. I haven't tried this kind of material before, and then I also, after that, we do a plastic wrap around it, and that is to keep the moisture in the mold while we're working on it, because sometimes you're working on it for a couple days. So we're going to surround the mold with paper towel that's dampened, and then we're going to put the plastic wrap around it and then tape it on there so it stays on there while we're working on it. And it also keeps the plaster off your hands while you're working as well. And you can pick it up and manipulate it. Oh yeah, there's a blue tape for wrapping it, for taping it to the wrap and the paper towel to your vessel. So we'll just wait for the mold to... Okay, so sorry again for not being recording the voice on this, the sound on this, so I'm doing a voiceover. So I'm talking about the paper towel that we're going to actually wrap the vessels in. So the vessels we're actually going to soak the paper towel in water to get it damp, wring it out so it's just moist, and then we're going to start wrapping the actual plaster silica vessels in the paper towel, and then we're wrapping it in plastic wrap. And we do that in order to keep the moisture in the mold while we're actually packing the vessels, so that it doesn't dry out. So, because your mixture, like your frit mixture, has some water in it in order for it to be like a paste. And if your mold is drying out, it'll suck all the water or the glue in the paste that you've made into the mold. So there we go. We have a picture of what we're doing. So we're actually wrapping Araya's vessel with the paper towel, and now I'm going to do a saran wrap. So this is a little bit of a fiddly process because it's the paper towel wasn't exactly the kind I have used before, and it didn't really work that well. But normally I use the blue paper towel that is a little more heavy duty. It stands up to fiddling with it a little bit. It doesn't break down moisture as much as the regular paper towel. So, and then that's just normal saran wrap. So we're just wrapping that around there, and then we'll use blue duct tape or blue painter's tape to actually tape it tightly around the mold so that when she's working with it, she can hold it and, yeah, that keeps the moisture in. This is kind of a fiddly process. And having it tucked in on the sides so that the paper towel and the saran wrap aren't on the lip of the mold is important, because it just gets in the way actually, and the frit will get trapped in there and all that kind of stuff. So it's just better to have it below the lip of the vessel, the mold. And there's hers. We're going to do one more little wrap of tape so it hopefully stays on, and it did through the whole process, so that's a good thing. Just tucking that in, like I said, so it sits below the lip of the mold. Ta-da! Done with hers. Now I'm going to do mine. Anyways, my little assistant lifting my bowl up, my mold up while I'm doing this. Yes, there's a whole conversation going on. I'm so sorry I didn't push the sound on. But it'll work out just fine. Definitely will get the gist of the steps here, so there we go. Goes on a lot easier on mine. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to get some of the excess moisture out of the bottom of my vessel. And as I was saying before, we should have soaked Aurea's vessel in water as well before we started working with it, because when we started adding the powder and water mixture to for the foot of the vessel, her mold was absorbing a lot of that moisture out of it, so she had to keep on adding water to it. So that tells me that the mold was dry even though we made it yesterday afternoon, and it had only been sitting there for a day. So, but it doesn't take long for them to dry out to the point where you need. And there's her powder. She's using Sunset Coral. I'm going to be using the Glacier Blue, Bullseye Frit, or powder. So we're going to actually switch down, and we're mixing a little bit into a separate cup. Just putting a little bit of powder in there, and then we'll be adding some water to that. And you don't need very much. Maria had to decide on how much she would need to fill to where she wanted the foot to be. So she's doing Sunset Coral in the bottom, and then I think there's like a light amber and clear mixture for the rest of the vessel. And mine's kind of a hodgepodge, which you'll see. So I'm just spraying some water into the little cup, enough to get it to turn into like a paste. And Araya's doing the same thing. You don't need very much. So just mixing a little bit at a time is a good thing. I think I had to add a little bit more powder to my foot, as you'll see in a minute, because it was just short by a hair. But yeah, you'll be seeing that. Now Araya's going to put her powder water mixture into the bottom of her mold. And I can see right away that, her mold is, it's just sucking all that moisture out. And even though the mold felt damp enough to the touch, obviously wasn't after we started going here, so. And hers isn't going to move down because all the moisture sucked out of it. So she's adding the rest of her powder to her base. I'm just using the little spoon to get it spread around a little bit so that I have an even layer of the frit. And then I'm going to start pounding. I think or packing, I should say, not pounding. You see how hers is crumbling a little bit? That's because it's so dry. So I think I caught that after I looked over from packing mine and said, oh, need more water. Definitely, you can see how crumbly hers is compared to mine. Yeah, we're just adding a little bit more water to hers. And I'm giving her a little packer. And those are the knitting needles that I found. I think it was at Joanne's Fabrics or something. Many years ago. They work perfectly though. They're actually come in all different size heads, so that's what we're using for compacting the powder. So yeah, and I'm adding a little bit of dry powder to mine because I had a little bit too much moisture in mine. I have the opposite problem of Araya. Excuse me. Pack, 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 pack. That's the name of the game. Pack, pack, pack. And the more time you spend on compacting the powders and even the fine frit once we get working on the sides, the better it is because you just don't want to have any air pockets trapped on either. And you want to, with the compacting the sides, you keep doing it for 5-10 minutes, even though it looks like it's all compacted, and it makes all the particles, pushes them together even more, and the chances of you having problems with holes in your piece from it not being compacted too much or not being compacted enough, it lessens the chances of that. So spending a little extra time saves you more time in the long run. Yeah, I'm just drawing the water out of the vessel. There we go, and you can see as I'm tapping mine, you can see it getting shinier, and that's just the water coming back up to the surface. So then I keep drawing more water out with the paper towel or the toilet paper. So there we go, drawing the moisture out, checking on arrays. Tap, 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 tap. More water. There we go. I hope these turn out. They're in the kiln right now. And they should be ready to show you in the next live demo. That'll be coming up in a couple days. Actually, I was going to check that. Yeah, so yeah, with us, it's just tap, packing the powder in there, either adding more water with urea, or me just continually pulling out the water from mine. So the demo that I'm gonna show you in a couple days after this is just an overview of the projects that we've created. So we have a few completed projects, and we'll be unpacking the Pate de Verre molds, and also showing you the mosaic pieces. Hopefully they'll be finished. They've been in the kiln twice now, so, and actually Araya decided to make another like mirrored piece, and so did I. So like I said, they're still being fired in the kiln. There's one more firing to do, but I'll be showing that. What else have we been making, just, the little Pate de Verre flower piece, my landscape powder wafers. No, actually, I'm going to be slumping that one. So, yeah. So that'll all be shown in a couple days after this little video. So there we are. We're finished. I'm finished with my packing of my foot, and I think Araya's done with hers. So we're just going to clean up a little bit, and then we'll move on to actually packing the molds. Yeah, the camera was it went a little lopsided, so, but it still records. It's too bad the volume wasn't recording. Sorry about that. Anyway, on to the next process. Okay, we're back again. So we're going to be mixing the frit together with the binder, which is just some glass tack mixed with water. I have some that I've previously had sitting around the studio. There's Lance going up and down. But yeah, so I'm going to be adding a little bit more water to my mix because it's probably dried out a little bit. So there I am. I've already got Araya started on doing hers, so, and she's spraying water into her little vessel and tapping it down, so, but I'm going to start on mine. So as soon as Lance gets his camera angle done properly, there we go. Okay, so we've got the foot in there, and now I'm going to start packing foot into the bottom on top of that foot. I'm going to get the packer out to decide which one I want. I'm going to use my doorknob. And Araya's busy packing away, so you can just see me pack. So I'm just compressing the powders. I think I had a little too much water in the mix. I should have just left it the way it was, but we can draw that out, and you'll see me draw it out in a little bit. I'm going to keep on adding water. So anyway, yeah, so I'm just packing the bottom. I'm just making sure that it's nice. There's a nice even layer on the whole underside on top of the foot. And now I can start packing sides. So that's what I'm going to start doing. And because I'm going to be doing some dots along the top edge of the piece, I'm trying to keep the powder below a certain level. So here we go. I'm packing the sides. So I'll just continue on around the whole thing. Don't need much commentary for that. Yeah, I'm just telling Araya that she doesn't need to fiddle with the edges too much. So she's adding more water because like I said, her mold is pretty dry, so I should have soaked it, but I should have turned the volume on. You learn by your mistakes and you just move on. I know the sound probably isn't the greatest with this little mic that I have. I'm just adding a narrative, so I'm just telling her to loosen her grip a little bit, so she wants to be able to hear the tapping instead of, just pushing it, like using your hand to push. There we go. Just really loose. Yeah, you don't have to grip the pounder really heavily, just loosely holding in your hand. And so this is the first layer. And once we have enough glass that covers the whole inside of the vessel, then we'll be adding the second layer. But you just watch what we're doing. I'm just getting all of the excess. I actually used all of that leftover piece of glass from a previous project, so it's getting it all of it in there. Who knows what I was saying? Anyway, so just packing in the glass. Again, just showing her how to concentrate on one area at a time instead of like going all over the place. Okay, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so I told her to focus on one area at a time and compact it and then move on to the next area, and she's still went all over the place. So that was like just correcting her so that she wasn't just pushing the frit all over and it was going in all different directions. So that's the easiest to just focus on an area, get that compacted down, move on to the next little area. And mine's all compacted. It's just I'm going over and making sure it's compacted even more. Like I said, spend 5-10 minutes just getting all that in there. And I think Lance put Ray on a timer for compacting. She was counting down on that. So yeah, just again telling her to just focus on one area and then go around. Yeah. She's focused. I don't know what I was looking for. Oh yeah, another container to put the blue color in. So I'm actually probably gonna move the packed frit down a little bit and start putting some of the powder dots in. Yep, that's what I'm doing. So I got the little sifter, and when I place it in there, the powder in there, it's actually a perfect little circle. And I'm just drawing some of the moisture out of the mold. Because as I tilted it, I noticed that the water was kind of sitting down at the bottom, and I don't want that to happen. Oh, there goes some of the powder. Anyway, but some of the water was sitting down in the bottom, and I just wanted to make sure that that didn't stay there, because when I started laying the powder down, it would run into the powder, and then it wouldn't be very good. Probably let it run a little bit. So and there's one little dot, and I was doing it kind of not as an even line all the way across the center. But, one little dot, two little dots, three little dots, and the dots will stay where I put them because the moisture from the mold starts absorbing into the powder, so it holds it in place. And then when I'm packing the frit around on top of those dots, you know, you're not smushing it all around. You're just trying to keep the frit that I'm covering the dots with, like concentrating on the one spot instead of trying to smear it across, because then that'll affect the dot, of course. I'm just adding more water to Araya's mold so that easier to compact down. Continue with my dots. Normally I don't have it at the angle that it's facing the camera. I'm usually working with it where I'm looking straight at it, so it kind of looks awkward, and it is awkward in the position that I have the sifter in. But I just wanted to make sure you guys could see what I was doing. And turning it around. Using my belly to keep it in place. Okay, there the dots are done. Just cleaning up some of the powder that I spilled. Getting it off the table. Okay, now I'm going to start mixing my just telling her to keep pounding. Because you can really see the difference when the more she pounds, right? So we're actually going to mix some more. So she's done with that layer, and we're actually going to be mixing more frit for her. Not yet. She's still pounding. And she's looking at the timer because it's like, I have how many minutes left to go? Yeah, so I'm grabbing my, what did I use? The Glacier Blue frit, the fine frit, and I'm going to put it into my container. So 1 scoop of that. And 1 scoop of the clear. Then I'm going to add some of the glue, which is the glass tack and water mixture, to that. Put the lid on it. Shake it up good. Get all those particles mixed up and moistened. She's still looking at the time. Lance had her on a timer. There we go. I got my mixture. Now I'm going to start putting it in on top of the dots. And the dots are the same color as what that mixture is, so I just wanted to see if it made any difference. If you could actually see the dots, and I'm sure you'll be able to see the dots that touch part of the amber glass. So I see how carefully I'm putting, because that'll be, well, the amber and the glacier blue are reactive against each other, so you'll see a little brown mark, and you'll see a little bit of brown mark where I've overlapped the fine frit glacier blue and the clear. Then packing in now. I just asked her if she noticed a big difference on how the frit was compacted since she spent so much time on it, and it's nice and even all the way, even thickness all the way around. You can tell that the particles are all compressed together, so that's a good thing, even though she had to spend extra time on it. She's still looking at the time. So And I'm just trying to get all that rim nice and compacted in there. So just doing a little section at a time, like I was telling Aria, instead of trying to do a big area at one time. And I'm pushing down the frit just so that the lip is even as well. I think she's gonna mix up her second layer batch with the food coloring in it, so she's ready for starting on the second layer. And she's just determining how much frit she'll need for that. Mm. And she did a big sigh there, so it was kind of like, I just did a sigh. It's like, oh, God, not this again. So again, she's putting the glass tack and water into the mixture that she had left in her little dish. And we're going to put some food coloring in there, which I forgot. So there we go. She's picking a color, and it's going to be blue. That's had a problem with the camera. There we go. It dies on you every once in a while, so I've turned it back on. Not the camera, but the tripod that it's sitting on. Here we go. Just a one little tiny drop, and it's amazing how little you need of the food coloring because you'll see how blue it becomes. But it's like I said, it's a great way to get an indication of what your second layer thickness is because you can actually see the difference between the first layer and the second layer. I just told her she could just open the lid and use a spoon to mix it up if it wasn't getting incorporated all the way. But look how blue that is. She said my bowl smelled like, I can't remember what she said it smelled like, but it smelled like soap or something, and hers didn't smell that way. She couldn't figure out why mine didn't, or hers didn't smell like that. So now she's going to start doing the same thing, compacting the foot first, and then moving up the sides. So I'm still working on the lip. Oh, yeah, so Rhea went and helped Lance to turn that back on because he didn't learn the first time how to do it. So. All the challenges of filming and all the equipment that's needed. Anyway, it's kind of been a cool process, so I've enjoyed doing these little demos for all of you. Look at isn't that pretty? You know, in this mold that I'm working on, like I've had it sitting around for a couple of years, but and I've had times where I've had like 10, 15 molds that I've pre-made, and I just put them away for another day if things come up and I don't have time for it. So you can do that. You can make multiple molds and set them aside and then rehydrate them, and they work out just fine as long as you're careful with storing them. But yeah, because it's not fired, so it's pretty. If you dropped it, it would break. So I'm trying to find a proper size of pounder. I love my little spoons that I got. I can't remember. I think I got them in Portland somewhere from what do you call those places? Oh, it's all like hardware and old hardware. And yeah, it was cool to find them. Neat little spoons, and they work great for this kind of process as well. I can't remember what they were used for originally, but it wasn't for this process. So I'm just going around the edge, and you see how some of the fruit is actually falling off or out of the vessel. So I'm just trying to angle the edge of the vessel a little bit at the very top. It just helps the fruit not falling in. So I'm setting that aside. Verre is packing away. Now I'm going to mix my second layer fruit together. And I'm just going to use clear in mine, so because I don't really want any extra color on the inside. I want it to be the same on the inside and the outside, so there goes the clear fruit. And probably do 2 scoops. Yes, I will. And I think I needed a little bit more, so I just used whatever Verre had left over in hers. I haven't put the food coloring in there yet, but that's what I'm going to do next. Anyway, is saying to me, I think you should use pink. So that's what I'm using. A little drop will do of the food coloring. I've had the same food coloring for many years, so it lasts you a long time, unless you're doing a huge amount of Pate de Verre. But there you go, shake, shake, shake. And there's the pink. So basically, like I'll just let the voice. Well, I won't voice over the rest of it because basically I'll just tell you what I'm doing. You can watch the rest of the video, but we're gonna put the second layer on, and it's basically the same process as the first layer. making sure that you have it compacted down nice and well. You start with the bottom of your vessel, pack that down, then start on the sides, and then around the edges, the top lip of the vessel, you kind of angle your foot so it tapers a little bit, and then you're done. So once we're finished packing our vessels here, we'll be setting them in the kiln. And for firing these pieces, because there's so much moisture, I always vent. You have to vent the kiln, and we put it on a long drying time, which I'm using 10 hours because these are my mold's pretty wet, and she's added a lot of moisture. Also, the sand that I put a little bit of playground sand on the kiln shelves, and then we place the molds on top of that playground sand and actually push it in there to level it and level the molds so it's not lopsided, because I think Aria's doesn't have a bottom. Mine has a bottom. I could actually just set mine onto the kiln shelf, but I'm not going to, because I always like setting it onto the sand just in case the mold breaks. Just anyway, so the glass can pour off into the sand, not onto my kiln shelf, and wreck my kiln shelf. So that's what we're going to be doing, and these dry at 212 degrees for, like, I go 100 degrees per hour to 212 degrees, and I hold it for like anywhere from 6 to 10 hours, depending on how much moisture is in your molds, and I'm going to do it for 10 hours. It doesn't hurt the mold. I just want to make sure that I get all the water out of the mold, so that, 'cause if you go too high too fast, any trapped moisture in the mold could break the mold, and then your glass is lost. So just precaution, but I'll let this run on, and thank you for watching. And if you, sorry about the voice or the sound, I really messed up a little bit with not turning the sound on, but you get the gist of the whole thing. The whole process is shown here. So if you like the videos, you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, I'll be posting more stuff after I've done this little series for the Toe River Arts Virtual Studio Tour. Make sure you check out the different artists' work, and yeah, we'll see you in a couple days for the reveal of these vessels and a few more things. So have a good night. absorb the moisture and we'll be back.